This is a Kirkendall Barrett presentation, darling. Well, hello everybody. It is your favorite day of the week. It is time for another episode of the Reality Reading Rainbow, where we talk about books written by reality stars, primarily those on Bravo, and try to make sense of them. I am Les Kirkendall Barrett. Hello, Victoria Wood.
Hello, Les. How are you? I hope all is well. I'm Just Peachy.
All is well. And yes, Just Peachy. I'm Just Peachy too, because we are talking today about the Real Housewives of Atlanta, or better yet, we're talking about our friend Dave Quinn's book, which if you didn't listen to last week's episode, please run and listen to it, because we talked to our friend Dave Quinn, who wrote the book. And Just Peachy is the chapter on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Before we start, let me just throw in, you know what? I'm really bad at promotions, and I'm really bad at promoting stuff. So let me get this out now, because I will forget. So we have a Patreon, and it is on Patreon at the Reality Reading Rainbow, where, you know, we have revamped it. So we are gonna have, how do I put it? Like an after show of sorts.
Yes.
So we're going to discuss the book and the regular podcast, which is this one. And then we're going to have a little after show. So if you are interested in checking out the after show and getting some extra tidbits and some extra gossip, sign on to Patreon, become a Patreon member. I know that times are tough for all of us right now, so I did not make our tiers expensive. As a matter of fact, it's pay what you can. So if you could throw us $1, great. If you could throw us $3, great. If you could throw us $100, hey, that's amazing. But, you know, we're doing this because we're reading these books. Books cost money. But at the other hand, I get that, you know, it's a weird time for all of us. So if you can't throw anything in, hey, fine. Listen to us anyway. Your presence is our presence, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Now let's start talking about the book.
Let's get into it. Yes. So the Atlanta Housewives is part 3 in Not All Diamonds and Rosé, and it's entitled Just Peachy, The Real Housewives of Atlanta, and the premiere date was October 7th, 2008. And I also loved how they opened the chapter with a quote from Miss Cynthia Bailey. "There's no fame like housewives fame." I mean, I found that quote interesting just because Cynthia had fame on her own, you know, although it was, you know, in fashion, being a model and everything. But it was quite interesting that for her, there was no fame like housewives fame. I mean, what do you think about it, Les? You know, being in show business yourself, like, is housewives fame really different?
Well, you know what I've learned with housewife fame? I've learned that it depends on what you do with it. So, like, for example, Cynthia Bailey, you know, she parlayed her housewife fame into other businesses. She had an agency for a while. She got herself out there. So, and everybody now, I don't believe Cynthia Bailey was a household name before.
No.
But Cynthia Bailey is a household name now. As with Candy, for example, I had an idea who Candy was. I wasn't really, I didn't know a lot about Escape back in the day. But now Candy took the ball and ran with it. And now everybody knows who Candy Burris is. And I didn't know if you're aware of this, but Candy goes on other shows. Like
Yes.
Candy won The Masked Singer one season. She was on Celebrity Big Brother. So Candy is the perfect example of taking your Housewives fame and being smart with it and doing things with it. So on that end, Cynthia is right, because Housewives fame can be your entree into bigger and better things. I mean, ask Bethany Frankel, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, I agree. It's quite interesting. You never know what you're going to get with it, but if you know what to do with it, you can make something big for sure. But back to the Housewives of Atlanta. One of the producers, well, not producers, one of the Bravo executives was saying that Atlanta was a franchise that took them by surprise. They had been sitting on a casting tape for a show called Hot Atlanta for a while. And it was the ladies of Hot Atlanta. So I found that super interesting. A woman named Princess Banton Loftus, who started the whole thing, put a cast together and brought her idea to Truly Original, who kind of really fleshed things out and then brought it to Bravo. And Atlanta was quite interesting because, some of these wives and ex-wives, were from prominent professional athletes, while others were just, a part of just that big Atlanta scene. But I just loved how they mentioned right on the first page that at the center of this whole franchise and the idea was Miss Lenithia Leakes. Yeah. I love it that even after all this time, they can, acknowledge that NeNe was the center of it all. Had NeNe not been there, I don't think it would have had the same, she was truly a standout in my opinion. She had a popping personality and she was the one that anchored that group of friends. I love NeNe. So I was super happy that they're giving her little flowers in the front pages.
and speaking of taking the Housewives fame and running with it, NeNe is like the perfect example, because I remember hearing once it got going that NeNe who was a realtor, I guess, at the time that she started, had always wanted to be an actress. She had an agent. She was trying. And say what you will about NeNe, but she ended up working with Ryan Murphy for a while. She did Broadway. She did Cirque du Soleil in Vegas. So as an actor, looking at this, I'm like, yes, that's how you do it. Because she took the ball and she ran with it. And, did you ever see that show that she was on, The New Normal?
No.
So Ryan Murphy had a show called The New Normal. I believe it was only around for one season. NeNe was one of the stars of that show. It was about a gay couple. It was about a gay couple who were trying to have a baby. And NeNe was like their friend. There was an episode where it was like the Nutty Professor, where you remember how Eddie Murphy played like a bunch of different roles. There was an episode where NeNe played like 4 or 5 different roles. And she was really good. NeNe could act. So that's another example of just taking the ball and running with it. Because she was amazing in it.
For sure. The next housewife they highlight is Sheree. Now, Sheree, as we all know, she was married to Bob Whitfield, who was a football player. And then Deshawn. Deshawn was the next housewife that was mentioned. Deshawn mentioned that her and NeNe both worked in real estate. She liked NeNe. She thought NeNe would have been really cool. So NeNe was the one who reached out to Deshawn and, invited her on the show. Sheree was mentioning she didn't know Deshawn, but she kind of was okay with her. And then, of course, Deshawn was excited because she knew about the Real Housewives of Orange County. So when she had the offer, you know, she was super thrilled, and she thought that, well, since they were already in the limelight, you know, this would have been great for her, especially because her husband was at the center. And the other person Nene pulled into the group was Kim. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you know, I say what you want about Kim though, but I thought she was quite an interesting character in that mix. She was very fascinating to me from the jump, thinking back to when I was just watching Atlanta for the first time, not knowing what I know now. But Kim was really interesting, and I found it fascinating. Andy was saying Kim was the one who confused him the most. He just couldn't understand how she would fit into this group. And it's not just because she was white, but it was just because, you know, he felt she looked like a country music singer, just, you know, big blonde wig. And she didn't look like she was living the lifestyle, you know, behind the gate, which, by the way, Sheree threw shade at Nene in the book, saying she doesn't know why Princess thought of Nene, because she wasn't living the lifestyle. I mean, her apartment wasn't even behind the gate, but, you know, she kind of takes over. So I was just like, I guess there's still bad blood there.
Now, this is what cracked me up about Kim. And this is actually what made me love the show out of the gate. Remember the first episode where Kim was like, I'm a country singer, I'm a country singer, I'm a country singer, I'm going to be working, it was Dallas Austin, right? Like, she wanted to work for Dallas Austin. I'm a country singer. And so then, you know, we get to the part where she was going to sing. So, you know, you're expecting like this, Wah! And then she sings and she can't sing worth a shit. And I was like, oh my God, I love this show. And they set it up. They set it up like she was just going to bust out. Mm-hmm. It did not happen.
No. I admire Kim. I mean, she was not admire her as in I like her, but I felt she served a purpose on the show. She had a level of delusion that was just crazy to me, you know, with her singing talent, you know, her fashion, just the way she was with her girls. It was just, honestly, I found Kim entertaining. I really did. And her being kind of like the sidekick to Nene in those early parts, I loved it. I loved their dynamic. I thought they had something there.
Right. And I guess in the end, she wasn't wrong, because she ended up getting her hit single. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, that's a whole other story. But one of the highlights in the Hotlanta chapter, because I have 6 highlights, and first major one was just the instant stardom of Nene Leakes. Now, for me, and also what they're alluding to in the book, was the whole iconic Sheree party and Nene not being on the list. Uh-huh. And there's always the question, did Sheree do it on purpose? Now, Sheree says she doesn't know what happened. She gave them the list. She was supposed to be on it, but I guess she didn't make the cut, which is very interesting, her choice of words in this book. Then, you know, Carlos King was saying no one knew what was going to happen. And in fact, Nene broke the 4th wall. They didn't show it on the show, which, to be honest with you, I wish they did. But
yeah, right.
Back in those days, you know, they weren't so keen on breaking the 4th wall. But apparently Nene had said, I'm on this show, these cameras are following me, you know, of course I'm invited kind of thing. And security just saying, sorry, you're not on the list, that kind of thing. And Sheree now saying, I gave them good TV. How about that? So, you know, it just has me, you know, I'm here thinking like, well, did you do it, Sheree, or you didn't do it? I mean, it's been what now? 2008, 2018, and now we're in 22. So, you know, it's been 14, going on 15 years now, Sheree. I mean, if you're listening, just tell us the truth.
And it's so funny because I just remembered the scene with Kim. Kim's like, I was on the list. but Nene wasn't on it.
I know. I remember that like it was yesterday. You know what I remember? I remember her changing in a gas station.
Yes.
Like a car.
Yes.
I won't forget it. I can't forget it. But yeah, that's my $1 million question. You know, did Sheree, intentionally do it, but she's not telling us?
I say yes. I say yes.
I vote yes too. I vote yes. I also love the fact that, the producers, Carlos King specifically was saying that Nene became a huge star just after season 1. It's something he said, he saw it coming. He was telling her, you're going to be a huge star. Nene didn't believe it. It just, she just didn't see herself that way. And he was saying how Nene called him during Thanksgiving to say, remember you told me I was going to be a big star? Well, you know what? You were right. And that for me was very interesting because I thought Nene was funny. She was just so snappy. She had these, quick comeback lines and so on. And, this, you can tell this was her passion. And this was the first time, I will say, Sheree threw shade in the book, but not so much shade when she was saying Nene wanted to act. She wanted to be on TV. This was her passion. She was even taking classes back then. So for her to get this opportunity to do the show, she jumped on it and she really worked it. And this is the shade. She did what she had to do to be relevant. But I think just Nene is savvy. Say what you want about her. She's very, very, very savvy. And that's the big takeaway for the first half of the book, first few pages of the book for me, is Nene was clearly the breakout star from the show.
I have a Nene story.
Go for it.
A real life Nene story.
Go for it.
So for those of you who don't know, I live in LA, and there's this place where you can go hiking called Runyon Canyon. And you can go, everybody hikes there. You can see celebrities. One of my friends saw Drew Barrymore hiking there once. And it's just everybody goes. I saw Justin Bieber there once. And so everybody goes to, it's just a well-known place. Everybody goes. So they have this yoga class that I used to go to like every day. So one morning, it was like an 8:30 a.m. class. I'm in class. We're doing poses. We see these two people walk up to the teacher, and the teacher was in, and I heard the guy, it was a man and woman, and the man's like, so is this every day? And the teacher's like, yeah. And he's like, the guy's like, well, what time does it start? And the teacher's like, 8:30. And the woman goes, in the morning. And I went, oh, that's Nene. Like my eyes were closed. I literally opened my eyes. I looked over and like, oh, that's Nene. And then when she left, the teacher was like, oh my God, that was Nene. That was Nene.
That is wild. I would have killed to see Nene in person. I genuinely love her. I adore her savvy.
And smaller. She's smaller than I thought she would be.
Really? Huh. Mm-hmm. Interesting. But yeah, I love Nene. I think I agree. She was Atlanta's breakout star. She definitely helped to put Atlanta on the map. She had that attitude. She was just good for the show. The next highlight from the chapter was about Marlo. Uh-huh. Now, up to this point, up to this podcast, Marlo has been a friend of the show. Marlo is not a full-time housewife. And I've noted in the book where Dave made this note, and there was a new face on the scene, Marlo Hampton, a pal of Nene's. She'd first appeared that season as a guest, so I'm guessing that was season 3, recurring in a similar role in season 6, 8, and 9, and in season 10, she was made an official friend, a role she's held consecutively for 4 years. But the housewife title seems to elude Marlo. So I've always had thoughts, why is Marlo not a full-time housewife? Is it because Marlo didn't want to be a housewife, which is, some of the rumors I've heard online? oh, she doesn't want to be a housewife because she'd have to put her whole life out there. But it's interesting, in the book, Marlo mentions, hey, I auditioned for a full-time housewife, right? So for fans out there who might have, missed that bit of news, she did audition. She wanted the role. They came to her house. They filmed a scene with her and her mom. But her family, she describes, was too love and hip hop for Bravo's brand. Her mom was eating out the fridge, yelling, cursing, drinking at 45. And she was saying, my truth was not what they wanted. It was not their truth that they wanted to put on television. She also said she was dating a big NFL star at the time. And part of her feels she would have been full-time, as in she would have been promoted to full-time on the show had she stayed in that relationship, but she was not happy. And she said she wasn't about to fake it just to stay on television, because it was clear they were very interested in her fashion, her style, her lifestyle. She was in a relationship with this NFL player. So, so my question to you is, what do you think about Marlo being a full-time housewife, or just the fact she's been a friend for so many years?
Well, I've heard that this season she's getting a peach, finally, after all of these years. Marlo, for me personally, Marlo has always been one of my favorites. I have always loved Marlo. I feel that there have been seasons where Marlo has given more than the peach holders, for sure. And I've always been fascinated with her. And I think everybody else has as well, because remember, there was a rumor that she was a hooker. There was a rumor that Ted Turner was her sugar daddy. There were all these different rumors about her, and nothing, like, would you describe her, I guess, what's the word, as an enigma?
Yeah.
Because, there were all these rumors about her. No one could ever pinpoint anything, and she would just come and she would just bring it. And sometimes she's one of these people on the show that she brings it sometimes without even trying. Like she's a natural fit. So I think part of the reason why now she's finally getting that peach is because I know over the past few seasons, I think it was her sister had issues with drugs, and her sister had 2 boys. And so Marlo has now taken the 2 boys into her home. So I'm thinking with that dynamic now, with her being a mother, that's going to kind of, make her even more interesting than she already is.
See, that's interesting, because one of, I think this is one of the producers was saying, to Marlo's point of feeling like had she stayed in that relationship, she probably would have been cast as full-time. The producer is saying we saw those cracks, in terms of relationship cracks with Portia, with Cynthia. But the reason they went with those women, in terms of making them full-time and not Marlo, is because their lives evolved along with the show. And they're saying Marlo's life, for some reason, didn't have like a natural evolution, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
So they couldn't cast someone because they were saying, I'm quoting now, they say to cast someone who doesn't bring that same kind of diversity in terms of or access to people around them is just not that interesting. And then Andy says everything Marlo was saying is true, but the fact her mugshots did not help her case with the network, even though NeNe continued season after season after season to push for Marlo. So it's quite interesting that, unfortunately she wasn't cast, but she had NeNe as a big advocate for her, but it still didn't happen. So I guess what I'm saying to kind of close out the Marlo chapter is that I guess now her transitioning to a mother auntie, as she calls herself, Monty, I think that is a transition, that may be the producers and network, this evolution where she's not just, fashion and this and that. her life is evolving and it now involves these two young boys.
And I'll say one more thing. And now I think like the timing is perfect for her to be on it, because in the beginning, I've always loved her, but she wasn't always likable. She did start like she was the villain for years and years and years and years. And over the past few seasons, she's become like softer and nicer and funny. So I guess that means I liked her in the beginning for the wrong reason.
Oh God!
But we have seen her evolve as a person.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason she's getting the peach now. It's because we've seen the evolution of Marlo to some degree. I mean, she's had a rough life, let's not, sugarcoat it, but I think she's getting softer. She's channeling, a different part of her. So it's going to be very interesting to see Marlo in the season ahead. So I'm looking forward to it.
I hope now that she has the peach, I hope she doesn't choke. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure. I just hope, again, she lives in her truth. Even though Bravo didn't want to show her mom eating out of the refrigerator, I'm like, give me that.
I would love that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so third highlight in this Atlanta section, which will come at no surprise. And I'm really going to dive deep into this in the after show. I'm not going to do that here. And I'm going to tell you why, because there's just so much to dissect. But the big highlight is the Porsha Williams, Kenya Moore reunion fight. Okay. That was a big deal. Now, Kenya says in the book, people will say, oh, Kenya provoked Porsha. But go back and watch the scene. She's the first one to start with me saying crazy, nasty things. Porsha called me a slut. Porsha said no man would have me. People don't want to see that because I was a villain, right? That's the role they were painting me to be. When you're the villain, it doesn't matter who's fucking with you. It doesn't matter what they're saying. You're always going to be the one to blame. That was from Kenya Moore. Word for word, her bit in the book. And I'm just going to say, because like I said, I'm going to dive deep into that scene. I'm going to dive deep into just everything that has been happening. But I agree with Kenya. And that's where I end this. I agree with Kenya. I mean, Les, do you remember that fight?
Yeah, because I remember the part, because Kenya had the bullhorn. And she's like, you are a dumb hoe. And then that's when Porsha grabbed her and it was over. It was over. But and I gotta say this. So have you seen The Ultimate Girls Trip?
Yes, I have. And that's also going to be part of the discussion in the after show. I'm telling you. We are going to be talking Ultimate Girls Trip. We're going to be talking Porsha's family reunion. Okay. And we're going to talk about this epic fight at the reunion and just everything that has transpired since that point up to now.
And I said this to Dave last week because I hated Porsha until I read this book. And then The Ultimate Girls Trip then just really reinforced everything, because on The Ultimate Girls Trip, Kenya couldn't have been more lovely. And everybody liked her. She was a total sweetheart. Spoiler alert, she did something really nice for Teresa from New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And so between these two things, I saw Porsha in a different light, as I did with Lisa Rinna. And what I mean by that is, to these women, this show is a job.
Yeah.
They know their assignment and they show up and they do their job. Lisa Rinna shows up and does her job, and Kenya shows up and does her job, which is to be the villain.
100%. And we need villains in these shows. I'll forever say I don't turn on my television to watch the Virgin Marys. No disrespect to the Virgin Mary, love her, but that's not what I'm looking for on Bravo for sure. The next major thing in this chapter is it's about Porsha again. But this time it's a Candy Burruss and Portia Williams, not fight. I'm just going to say they're falling out because technically, you know, I mean, you could say it's a fight, but I think more of what happened with Kenya and Portia was definitely a fight. Candy and Portia had a huge falling out. So in the book, Dave says, and I think this was very, you know, it was a great little few lines to tie this thing together and summarize it. So I'm reading from the book now. He says, Portia's journey was about to hit a major bump, though. In season 9, she revealed she heard a rumor that Candy and her husband had plotted to drug and rape her. The shocking claim, which Candy and Todd both denied, was later traced back to Candy's former BFF, Phaedra. Now, all I'm going to say, oh, and Miss Candy says it herself, this was a very hard falling out. It was hard. It was tough. It was horrible. And I will never forget the look, the tone, the reaction, just everything of Candy in that moment, because I know how it feels like you're not crying, but you're so angry. You know, it's like every emotion was flowing out of you. Yeah, to me, that was just, it was just crazy. I still can't believe Portia did that, you know. I can't believe Phaedra said that, because for me, I just felt like there's certain lines, you know, you can throw shade, you can stir up drama, little white lies here and there, you know, it's television, it's for entertainment. But I felt like a serious line was crossed there. And this is also something I'm going to dig deep into in the after show. But real quick, Les, like, what was your thought process on this?
I mean, you know, what was said was truly, that could have been so damaging to Candy, and damaging to the point that that's something, when you're getting into like drugging and attempted rape accusations, that's something that you can't come back from a lot of times. That, you know, people's lives have been ruined for accusations like that. So and you could see when watching it, like you can see that Candy was truly hurt.
Yeah.
You know, what I want to know and what I'm curious about is, so Phaedra ended up getting fired.
Correct.
But how did Portia skate through? Even though, on the one hand, I can kind of see Portia's point too, where if you're being told that someone is going to do this to you, I could see how, you know, she'd be like, what the fuck as well. So I'm factoring that into it.
Yeah. See, that was kind of my other point, which is ultimately Phaedra being dismissed from the show. But see, I think when it comes to that whole, you know, scandal of it all, the lies that were told, it was a producer's perspective, for me, that was most valuable. Because now we're at the reunion, you know, and Carlos King says, you know, Portia kept saying, that's what I heard. I mean, we saw it. We watched the show. She kept saying, that's what I heard. They kept asking her, well, where did you hear it from? And whatever. None of them knew. So everyone was in the complete dark. Cynthia says, we filmed the whole season not knowing. And then at the reunion, when Portia said that Phaedra was the one who told her, that was a shock for everyone. Like, no one knew what was going on. That was a very raw moment. But what the producer said after that grand reveal is what I found interesting. So he is assuming, but again, you know, they're around these women, they, you know, they have all the tapes. So this is why I value their opinions. He was saying, I guess the reason Portia brought that up at the reunion was only because she saw how the storyline played out with her on the show. And she saw what people were saying about her on social media. And she felt the need, the only reason to tell the truth was to save herself. So when you talk about, well, how was Portia able to kind of scathe on by? I feel Portia engineered that whole, you know, reveal and what happened after the fact. So instead of losing 2 women, they just let go of the offender, really. And it was very clear that Portia was only trying to save herself. Yeah. And then, of course, that was devastating for Candy because they had gotten super close.
Right.
As in Phaedra and Candy, she would say, you know, we would all hang out as friends, you know, or families. But near the end, they started having, you know, falling outs, apparently. And I'll get into why they had falling outs, you know, in the after show. But if you've read the book, you already know. But yeah, it's just, it was crazy, that dynamic. I personally felt Portia kind of scathed on by, but at the same time, I understand why. That's all I'm going to say. I get it.
Right.
I get it. And then the last big thing in the Atlanta chapter list is the fact that Nene had such a tumultuous departure, that there were accusations of racism. You know, the whole cast, you know, reacted to, you know, what was going on. And of course, Andy, you know, shared his final thoughts. What I found interesting, I guess, was when Andy said the queen bee stuff gets exhausting in any city. And yeah, it's like, I feel Nene's last couple of years on the show, it was really tough. You know, she was going through a lot. She was on a big apology tour. She was trying to rebuild friendships. You know, and the way it ended, you know, when she just closed that computer, she was just like, I'm out, you know.
And then we now know because, you know, Greg, her husband, has since passed away.
Yeah.
So she was like in the middle of on top of everything else, he was battling cancer as well.
Yeah.
So
she's going through a lot. I just found it interesting that from the producer's perspective, the executive's perspective, and I guess maybe some viewers too, I never viewed it that way, but they were all saying that Nene thought like there was some plot to take her down, and she demanded a certain level of respect, I guess, you know, as the queen bee. So hence Andy saying the queen bee stuff gets exhausting.
And I gotta say, so, and we've talked about it and with other chapters. So the same thing happened to Vicky. I think Nene did get to the point where she thought, this is my show. And that's always your undoing, as we've seen. Because Vicky, you know, Vicky said the same thing. Nene, this is my show. It's my show.
Yeah.
Because think about it for a second. There are people like Teresa from New Jersey, Kyle. They've maintained and lasted the entire time. But I think the difference is, and I don't mean this in a bad way, they know their lane and they stay in their lane. Because even Teresa, for as like, you know, aggressive as she can be, she stays in her lane. And you never see her saying, this is my show. Or what, actually, I think she has, but at the same time, she hasn't like diva'd out either.
Yeah.
And then Kyle basically does her shit, but she kind of stands back. I think that's the key to staying.
Yeah, I agree. It's, you know, it's a very fine line, I feel. And, you know, you and I have had conversations. I mean, what these women get paid to do these shows. I mean, don't get me wrong, Atlanta pulls a big paycheck, you know, and they've earned it over the years. But at the same time, you know, there's just so many moving parts. You have to keep moving. There's so many parts you have to keep juggling to stay on the show. And after a while, you know, I think as individuals, we have to question, is it worth it? And also, I think at some points, I think Nene was struggling with her real life and then this television life, and, you know, something caved.
And like, here's a tidbit that we discussed a little bit. I have a room on Clubhouse. Actually, I have a club on Clubhouse called the Reality Detective Agency, For those of you who don't know, Club Bravo has taken a little pause. And so I've continued, I've decided I enjoy doing Clubhouse. And so I started the reality detective agency, which the Bravo Detective Agency is a part of that. And so on the Bravo Detective Agency, someone brought up an interesting point the other day that one of the reasons why Ramona has lasted so long is A, she knows how to step back with production, but more importantly, B, she's willing to take pay cuts when asked, she will take a pay cut.
Right. Well,
so
yeah.
So attitude and how much you're making, you're right, like factors into this.
100%. At the end of the day, like I said, it's a huge balancing act. Finances, as always, important, but also respect. And I'm going to end this episode on the Nene note, and also just to add that a lot of her accusations that she was making at the time seemed wild to viewers.
Not anymore.
It seemed wild. I know a lot of people probably never believed her. They were questioning, okay, maybe she's only saying this because of how her relationship with the network had ended. But all I'm going to say, if you pay attention to current Bravo news and just all the happenings, right, I think the possibility is very high that Nene knew what she was talking about, that it was her truth. And maybe we weren't ready to hear it at the time, but I haven't forgotten those words, Nene, and I see it, reflected today.
And it wasn't even, to give us credit as viewers, I don't even think it's that we didn't want to hear it. They weren't as out there about it as they are now.
100%.
I know for me, I didn't see any examples of racism on these shows. Yeah. I do now because, it's like now they don't hesitate to show them, or maybe they show them and don't think that, how do I put it? Not that we're going to pick up on it, but the people editing these shows, I guess, don't know what racism is. And so because of that, they are a little lax in showing it. And so they're showing it more. I don't know if that made any sense.
100%.
But yeah, to give us as the viewer credit, back then it wasn't as blatantly in our faces racist as it is on these shows now.
Absolutely. I think a lot's coming out in the wash now. And it's just fascinating. But you guys, that's Just Peachy. That's Atlanta for now. Those are the major highlights. And if you want to hear more about our thoughts and discussion on this topic, because we have a lot of thoughts, okay? That was just cracking the surface. Head on over to Patreon.
Head on over to the after show. And also, if you want to get a hold of us, we have an Instagram page on Insta. We're the Reality Reading Rainbow. You can follow us, or you can join our Facebook group, the Reality Reading Rainbow on Facebook. If you have any suggestions for books or just want to drop us a line and say hello, you can email us at our email, which is therealityreadingrainbow@gmail.com. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We are open to reader suggestions because some of the best books that I have read on this podcast were reader suggestions. House of Hilton, reader suggestion. Danielle Staub, reader suggestion. So if you suggest it, we'll read it. So feel free to do that. Yeah. And then Victoria, I will talk to you in the after show. And if you're not going to join us on the after show, then I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.